Alex
Go.
Lair.
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the kickoff panel for What's New, What's Next with the New York Design Center. My name is Barb Fuller, and I'm Vice President of Marketing at Arteriors, a leading provider of furniture, lighting, and home decor. We are so excited to be launching this year's virtual iteration of What's New, What's Next with a very timely panel topic titled 2020 Now, What Does Livable Luxury Mean Today? And I feel so thrilled that we have an all-star lineup of the industry best personalities for this morning's discussion. None of them really need any kind of introduction, but I'm going to take just a moment. First with our moderator, Business of Home's Dennis Scully, most known for his scintillating podcasts and annual Future of Home conferences. Dennis is broadcasting live from our New York showroom at 200 Lex this morning, so we're excited that he's there. And our panelists include interior designers Laura Kirar and Dixon, as well as architecture and design firm Workshop APD with Andrew Kotchen and Matthew Berman. All of them are part of our Arteriors guest design program. And what's most exciting about this lineup is that we have our true veterans of the guest designer program, both Laura Kirar and Dixon, having design collaborated with us since 2010 and 2012 respectively. And then exciting, in the new spring launch of next year, we will have the launch of Workshop APD's design collaboration. So we're thrilled to have everyone with us today. We couldn't have picked a better group to speak of this changing definition of livable luxury in this brave new era of design where we are all spending more time at home than ever before. And the concept of home has taken on tremendous new meaning. So we look forward to all the different and unique perspectives that this group and panelists will bring to us today. Before I turn it over to Dennis, I just wanted to invite all of you to join us socially at our Instagram account with @ArteriorsHome, as well as #WNWN. So thank you, Jim Juckman. Thank you, 200 Lex, and we appreciate this new year format of the virtual What's New, What's Next. So Dennis, I'm going to hand it over to you now. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Barb. I'm delighted to be here. The fabulous Alex Lehrman is just a few feet away from me over here off camera. She sends everyone her very best, and she's thrilled to kick this off. I wanted to start, we're in the midst of such a historic time, and we're going through some of the most dramatic changes to the way we work and live right now that many of us have ever experienced. And today I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about what this means for your design practice and what it's starting to mean for your clients, and ultimately how you're thinking about what is likely to last from this time and what you imagine might fade away. So Matt, I know that you and Andrew moved out of your offices in New York City back in March. And for the moment, at least, you're not feeling wildly compelled to get back there anytime soon, although Andrew is making an appearance in the office today.
Yes,
I
am.
For the first time in a while. But I wonder if you could share with us sort of what your thinking is right now around all of
that. First of all, Dennis, it's great to see you. And Barb, thank you very much for hosting. And it's great to, be interacting and stuff like that, sort of what feels like almost in person these days. I think it really started off with no one knowing what was going on and everybody just trying to do their best, trusting, that we had good technology and hoping that it worked. And ultimately we found that, our technology worked pretty well, that people worked really well, remotely, and that everybody got up to speed very quickly. I mean, I think we had a 2-day hurdle of like, what's going on, that turned into everybody being incredibly productive. So for us, I think we've seen that our productivity hasn't really changed. We've learned a lot of things about people working from home. People really like, in some ways, when they can isolate themselves and focus and get their work done. So all of that for us over the past, I think 6 months has been a tremendous learning experience. I think if you had asked us before this all happened, what we thought of working from home, frankly, as employers, we weren't that thrilled with the idea. But I think, I think that's the honest truth. but I think we've come around to that, and we've seen that, you know, work can get done and be done very productively. So I think going forward, we don't know. We know that we need to come together for certain things. We know that we want an office that has a collaborative spirit. We want people to come together. People need to look at palettes and materials together and do things together. But maybe that's done in, you know, a more strategic way where we do allow people to focus on things independently and then come together when needed. That's where our head is right now, at least.
Yeah. And anything to add there, Andrew? Or
I know. I think Matt captured it well. It's one thing I think we've learned over the past 6 months is that we can't really predict the future. We just need to be nimble, rest on our abilities and things we've done in the past, and call on them as needed as we move forward into this. You know, from a workflow standpoint, you know, things look much different 5 months ago than they do now for us, and I think we've been pretty fortunate that, you know, new work is happening. We're pretty excited by it. So not something we expected, though. Certainly not something we expected several months ago.
Yeah, and an interesting sort of overarching theme of this conversation, as all of you will attest to as we go along. Surprisingly, you're all sort of remarkably busy during this time. Barry, I know you're incredibly busy during this time. I wonder if you could remind us where you are geographically and tell us a little bit about what's been going on for you in the past 6 months.
Well, I somehow cosmically was a little bit ahead of the curve on this. I moved my offices from my urban offices I had downtown in Georgetown in Washington 20 years ago. I bought this old Stanford White House out in the middle of nowhere, about an hour and a half out of DC, and moved my whole studio to the country. So it's been easier for us because we're sort of used to working a bit more remotely. A lot of our projects are not in town. We have to either do virtual meetings for those or fly to them. Strangely, again, Kismet, they just put a wonderful carbon neutral in my village of Warrenton, Virginia. They just built a little private airport, all carbon neutral. There's a conferencing room there it's high tech. It's literally about 15 minutes from my front door, from my gates of the farm. So that has worked out for us. What we've changed a little bit is we don't have the full staff here at the studio on any given day. We sort of stagger so that people are working from home, and then coming in. We're still masking up if we're doing meetings. We're at a boardroom table. We're in our office alone. We're off, and if someone comes to the door and knocks, we put our mask on and they come in and we work. But we're trying to limit how much interaction people have directly with each other so that we're being responsible in that regard. I had previously set up satellite offices in all of my staff's home, their own computer systems, their own copiers, things like that. So it actually wasn't as hard for us to acclimate because we were well down that pipe just from deciding to leave the city years ago. Some people questioned my sanity at the time I did it, including one of my other personalities arguing with myself. You know, I was wondering if I'd done the right thing. We seem to be set up well for this. Recently, I spent all last week in Texas. We were working on a ranch in Hill Country, Texas. But again, we just flew directly there, met with our client, came back. We are working.
You seem to have a nice travel arrangement with your clients, Barry.
Well, and I don't have that with everyone. You know, you have it with some, and you have.
It helps. It definitely helps.
We've been doing a lot of virtual meetings too. And especially with some of the things we're doing a commercial project for Maker's Mark. We're doing multiple things for them, and we're working with Key Summer Hour Architects in Loretto, Kentucky. And we were flying to every other week before this, and now we've been saving this as Friday afternoon meetings that we do for basically as online meetings. We just do the virtual meeting, but we're able to get everything done that way. We send our drawings back and forth. We send everything electronically. It works. For our private clients, we've not missed a single installation on a residential project. We've seen a few things come in a little bit later than they might have before COVID, just because of shipping technicalities and things like that. But everything has come in and everything's happened. We saw some clients a little bit worried early on that if they ordered things that maybe some of the companies wouldn't be able to deliver them. But we've not had that problem either, thankfully. a week or two delay is much different than someone not being able to fulfill an order, and that's all we've had.
Yeah, yeah. Many of those early worries seem to have faded away from that perspective. Thank goodness.
Away and people have gotten over the hurdle.
I think, Dennis, you just realize how adaptable people are. I think that's what it comes down to. Everybody is incredibly adaptable, and people have adapted.
As it turns out, and as you said, you were concerned in the beginning about people working from home, and this never would have been your choice a year ago. But as you say, people have risen to the challenge, and people have adapted, and in a whole host of ways. So it's remarkable to see. Laura, from your perspective, so you've been living down in Mexico, living and working down there full time for a while. I want to hear about the hacienda. I want to hear about everything that you've been working on, and I want you to share with everyone who's tuned in the life you've been living down there.
Well, yeah, it's been an interesting 6 months, 8 months, 90 days of quarantine and not leaving the hacienda. I'm sure nobody felt sorry for me. But truly, it was quite challenging, I have to say. I think I haven't been anywhere longer than 3 weeks in about 10 years. So I almost have lived out of a suitcase just because of the travel back and forth to the US and traveling for collection work and clients. And so quite candidly, the first 2 weeks, I really freaked out. And, you know, my staff went home. So I reestablished a studio in Merida in the Yucatan. And it was challenging, even though we've been used to working with our clients remotely for the last couple of years. It's really difficult to work with your draftspeople and redline a set. It takes like 3 times as long when you do it, and then you have to send it back rather than sitting with someone and looking over their shoulder and marking something up. And, so there was definitely a shift for us, but we never really stopped our work. We never really stopped our jobs, and continued our weekly meetings with clients and stayed on schedule, and we remained on schedule. So I do think that my move to Mexico 3 years ago really inadvertently really helped prepare us for this kind of thing. And in that time, just before COVID, I opened a really beautiful house in San Miguel de Allende called Maison Hidalgo, retail and a guest house. And great timing, Laura, for retail and a guest house. But I have to say that the downtime actually really gave us time to prepare our marketing and really sort of firm up the vision behind what we're doing here. And I can tell you that I have been constantly in contact with friends all over the world who have San Miguel and Merida, and basically as soon as they can travel, it's high on their list. They're going to come see us. So I'm actually really looking forward to that.
I'm imagining you're going to be overrun. Once this gets figured out, I would think there are so many people that are going to be coming your way that I hope you have your operation ready.
We're ready. We are ready to welcome you. And it's actually been a really great place to spend this time. Like I said, I've not complained much because I've been really, really grateful that we haven't had anyone, in our studio sick. We haven't really, had difficulties or losses or anything like that. And so we're very, very grateful for that, and super compassionate for everyone out there who's struggling and trying to get through this.
Yeah, indeed. Andrew, one of the sort of most dramatic shifts that has occurred as a result of COVID seems to be people fleeing cities, and we're constantly sort of hearing about this in the media, and we're all sort of trying to figure out how real all of this is, and are clients really relocating to country homes? Are they buying new homes? Are there homes left in Nantucket? Can you shed some light for us on how it is for your clients and from your perspective?
Sure. Like I said before, I don't think at the start of this we ever would have imagined the influx of new work, which is a result of the outflux of people out of urban areas, mainly Manhattan. I don't think there's a line, Laura, of people waiting to come to Midtown Manhattan like they are to go to San Miguel, but that's where I am right now. So maybe some things will open back up on the streets here at some point. It's an interesting thing. Everybody knows this is a temporary state. It may last 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, but it has certainly touched everyone in a different way and made them realize about where they want to be if they can't move around. And from that standpoint, I think it's more about people have realized when you're sort of trapped, is the urban environment a place where you want to be, or is it really about space and nature and connecting to the outside and being in the places that you love? So we've certainly seen outside of Manhattan in Fairfield County and Westchester County and in New Jersey, a tremendous influx of new business. Additionally, we happen to do a lot of work in the Cape and Islands and in Nantucket in particular. I don't think anybody would have imagined the market out there would be what it is over the past 2 months, 3 months. It's just the real estate is flying off the shelves. People are bidding up on places. It's taken on a whole new thing, and people have realized that their happy place, the place they want to be, they're willing to invest in it right now, whether they were sitting on the sidelines for many years and didn't own, whether they've been going there for 20, 30 years with their families. They've realized that it's time to upgrade. This is really something we want to do, because obviously we're in a business where it's not instantaneous. They're not hiring us to move in tomorrow. They're hiring us to move in 2 to 3 years, depending on the size of the project. So it's a long view that people have. It's not a short view, but this has certainly become a catalyst for people to want to invest more in their long view and their secondary home or primary home, where they want to displace their time and energy. So it's fascinating, it's unique, and it's something that we're pretty excited about.
And it sounds like it's something you're feeling has some longevity to it. I mean,
I think it must, otherwise you wouldn't invest in a 3-year project, right? Because you're not moving in for 3 years. You're making the decision right now during COVID, but you're not going to reap the benefits for several years down the road. So that's why I see it as a long view, in that there's a greater investment in displacement from urban areas. Again, our business is not an instantaneous thing. So the folks that are literally moving out and closing 30 days and moving their furniture in, that's a different scenario than the engagements we're having with clients. That's not the business that we're in, obviously. So I think they all believe that there's, life can really exist and you can run a successful business from anywhere now. This has certainly proved it. And the need to be in the urban environment is just not there as much anymore.
I think we're seeing, Dennis, that the past 6 months has allowed everyone to kind of take a breath, right? This is what you've just been able to, you've been forced to take a breath. And when you take a breath and you're out of off of that hamster wheel, and you're just sort of looking at you and your family and what makes you happy, you then start to sort of just see more clearly, and you make decisions based on that. And so I think, to Andrew's point, it's really just about that. That's why we think it's a long-term thing. We think this has, it's a short-term problem with long-term implications. And we are going to see ultimately that people start thinking more about where they want to be, what makes them happy, and they're not as connected to the cities or whatever as they were before, because they can work, wherever they need to be.
Yeah, to be sure. Barry, it sounds like a lot of your clients are moving around and relocating and fleeing certain areas where they were before. It sounds like in some cases moving deeper into the country, perhaps. Tell us what's going on in your world and what some of your clients have been asking you for.
Well, pretty much, what our friends are talking about here. It's we're seeing a real influx of people into my area of the country. My partner is a real estate person with Sotheby's, and the big estates out here in horse country are selling left and right. And people literally, this week there were 2 bidding wars on 3 different properties that he was handling. So of 3 that were within a mile even of where I live.
Wow.
He wasn't seeing that before COVID, and so that's a litmus on what's happening in my immediate area. We're doing a lot of work up in the mountains in Tennessee at Blackberry Farm for private residences, Cashiers, North Carolina, again, Hill Country, Texas. We're seeing people. I think people are watching real estate in the urban areas, and it's almost like stock. There are opportunistic buyers that might say, well, I think this is going to go down, and then I think there's going to be a reversion to a lot of that at some point. I don't think it's here yet because people are seeing how low those prices might go, I think, to buy well, and then you'll be doing maybe some more of those projects in the city. But right now, the bulk of our work is this. And we had so many longtime clients calling us to reimagine what we had done for them. We had clients that were about ready to sell because they were empty nesters that now stopped. They didn't want to sell because they need to keep the big house because kids are coming back home. Kids that went to college are now working virtually from home for their, and they know they're going to do it this fall. Will they do it in the spring? Will they do it next year? They're preparing for that. We had a client call and do 9 rooms on an upper level of a secondary wing of a big house that we had done that they'd never really finished off, so that they can have more guests and have more distance from those guests when they're there under their roof. And Laura was talking about travel and that sort of thing. And I think, as they were saying to people, as soon as the floodgates open, people will travel again. But right now, I think on another level for what we see, not being architects, but being designers, we're seeing people invest their money in their homes, feather their nest, because they can't travel. They're not going to be going to Villa d'Este. They're not renting a boat and going someplace in the Mediterranean this year. They're putting all that money into their home, and they're thinking, how can I luxuriate at home? It's starting to even change. I did now 2 separate sets of space plans I've done for clients where I was actually considering social distancing. I was laying out my furniture and the size of a dining table. How far can you be away from if they have? And I hadn't done any of that ever before. And it was a request.
These are the kind of clients Barry has. They could have the 30-foot long dining table.
Well, no, what we're thinking is like what screened-in areas, screened-in porches off of the house, which is what we're doing in all of them, with a long like picnic table type thing, and you make it a little wider so that people literally trestle benches even on each side of it, so that you can sort of, without setting chairs, how do you move down? It can be a very simple solution and not such a formal or expensive solution too. A lot of it's just practicality.
Well, and you mentioned too to me that more people were asking you for home theaters, that you hadn't been doing home theaters sort of for years, and now suddenly a whole bunch of people want a home theater again.
I thought the thought of a media room and home theater to some degree was dead. Over the years, it had been years since we'd ordered sort of the theater seating in a house, which you used to see a lot of, and that had become more like a lounge entertainment area that also had a big media system where you had the big sectionals and maybe some chaises and revolving chairs on swivel chairs and things like that were all really comfortable. And we're still doing that, but we've 3 separate media rooms. People that can't go to the theater, that might not be going to see a play. And what do you do with all this downtime when all of the family's home that might have been off at school, and when they're not working, what do you do? Basically, you have to entertain within the house. So game tables, where are you going to do a puzzle so you can leave it set up for 4 days? Where is everyone going to put their computer? If multiple people are on a laptop in a single room, where are they sitting? It does change actually the DNA of a room that you're going to live in during this time.
Yeah, that's what I'm really curious about. I'm also curious about sort of materials. And Laura, I was fascinated to hear about this copper-clad development project that you're working on. And I wonder if you could explain that to listeners. And I'm wondering if it's an example of people thinking about materials in sort of a wellness mindset. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched upon a project I can't talk about too terribly much yet, but
no secret, okay.
No, but I think I think the decision to work with that material was both aesthetic and about the sort of health properties of this material. And you know, it was when I was talking with the client about it, we just thought, you know, this was in development. The idea was there before we were faced with this challenge, you know. But it did really make me feel like we were onto something there, and that the thought process about having a clean building, the materials we're using, how they affect the environment, how they affect the day-to-day life of the person in the room, in the building, that it's become much more important and much more in the forefront of people's minds when, you know, when they hire a designer and when we're creating a project. So, and, you know, and throughout that process, my clients and my employees were both saying to me, like, how can you be so calm throughout this process and designing this? And I thought, you know, I think because what else am I going to do? You know, like, this is sort of out of our hands.
Yeah.
We can only do what we can do. We can be smart about it. And this, in my career, this is at least the third crisis, financial or otherwise, that I think that we've faced as Americans or globally. And it's so true that the focus, when one cannot travel and one cannot be as expansive as they normally are, the focus does return to the home. I think people definitely look inside themselves and do recall, like, what's important. They assess their quality of life, and maybe that doesn't involve, you know, beating the city streets and the subway and all of that kind of stuff. You know, they really are thinking about having more air, more light, more space, more nature around them. So I've definitely seen that with my clients, and definitely the focus has been much more on residential than my commercial work. However, the copper-clad building is a commercial building, and we are on schedule, and that will move forward. And I really see that as being kind of a groundbreaking, clean building in the city where it will be built. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, well, you let us know when you can talk more openly about it, because I have all sorts of questions about this copper-clad development project.
I got your number.
I think it's interesting. I think we're, you know, anytime something happens to really shift our mindset, both in this country and globally, I think we fall into this very reactionary phase. And I think, you know, we all work for fairly affluent clients at the end of the day, for the most part, right? And I don't think COVID is really shifting for us their way they want to live in their home. They all obviously care tremendously about their home to begin with. Otherwise, they wouldn't hire folks like all of us and probably many on the Zoom call right now. I think it's more about the time duration with which you spend in these places, and does that cause a shift? Not the beautification or the embellishment of the home or the importance of outdoor spaces and outdoor activities. And how we navigate that and really maybe move the needle forward in the design industry, I think, is where the sweet spot will be. Because again, we're not in this reactive business that we can solve problems overnight or within a 6 to 12 month period. We're solving problems over 12 to 48 month periods on many projects, whether it be in the commercial space or in the single family residential space. These projects take time. So you never want to be thinking you're doing something that has already died out by the time it's done. Like we spend a lot of time, we've always spent a lot of time thinking about the time duration of program and how often we're in spaces and how they're used. And I think both working in both urban places where you try to create redundant uses versus expansive homes out in the country where there's endless ground cover and endless size, that sort of tension between the two is where we've found sort of the solution to exist in how you're going to live and use a space. But I always caution that, you know, clients that sort of called up right at the beginning of this and wanted to like rethink things, like, let's not be too reactionary about what's happening right now, because life will go on. We had a vision, we had a plan in place. Like, it covered 98% of this already. Let's just, you know, try to pick up that 2% through our experiences to make things better. Just because otherwise you get stuck in this wheel of changing things over and over again, and that's never super productive.
Yeah, I mean,
or positive at the end of the day.
no, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point, you know, and Barb mentioned at the beginning our Future of Home conference, and interestingly, we have a guest speaker who's going to be speaking at the Future of Home, a woman named Emily Anthus, who wrote a book talking about the fact that turns out we've always been spending about 90% of our time indoors before all of this.
Yeah.
And you know, so the question really is, now that we are giving so much attention to all of this time, and how we're feeling differently about that indoor time, what is it making us ask for? What is it making us think about? You know, Barry, you were mentioning people sort of thinking about spacing themselves out more. And truthfully, I can't imagine that that's not going to linger for some time. I know I feel very differently about being close to people in spaces than I used to. So I can certainly see that from a design perspective, just creating wider, broader, maybe more open spaces, right? I mean,
I think it's that, and it's as the panel's speaking to. We're, you know, it's not that they're going to change everything, but I've noticed a real, like, people wanting like a larder or a pantry, a big one, off of their kitchen to store everything.
Yeah.
Every client I have right now says they're baking a lot more with their kids and family. They want, are 2 ovens enough? You know, we want to bake more. Where are we going to roll out cookies? We need a stone cold surface for that. I mean, most of my clients weren't asking for this 2 years ago. And I think that they found a lot of these activities with family that started out as a temporary thing to do, to entertain the kids, or to bake your own bread because you don't want to go to the store. You know, you don't want to, you know, spend that time out there. I think that they're liking it, and they're saying, oh, well, we want more of this anyway. So the reason I think that some of this will resonate and stay is because, as we alluded to earlier, people are discovering lifestyles that may not require them to live the life they lived before. If you're not going to work every day, then you're going to prepare lunch every day at home. If there are 3 meals a day, that's a third more meals prepared in your house. So, I mean, it does change. What are your refrigeration, how much refrigeration and storage do you have for those things? We're getting it across the board with our clients. I also have noticed a trend in aesthetic that is almost strangely, like, since I can't travel to these exotic places, I can't go to Morocco or go to Europe this summer or go to the islands in the winter. I see people wanting to have some of that sort of worldly fantasy in their rooms. They don't want to be bored with the rooms if they're going to be in them 24/7. If they can't travel, maybe their rooms can sort of teleport them to another place. We're seeing more color, more pattern. Strangely, I see, because we do a lot of I just finished, we were talking about Nantucket, a beautiful home in Nantucket, and Nantucket gray was our inspiration, and everything's gray and white with the colors of the flowers you put in the room. But we're getting less of that request. I don't think people want to live in a gray world 24/7, and we're seeing more pattern and color infiltrate the wish list of our clients. So, and it's been pretty quickly. I don't think it's strictly a knee-jerk reaction. Some of it was, but I think it's going to linger. I really think it's going to linger.
Well, and it helps me to gracefully segue into our overarching topic, which is this livable luxury idea. And I'm curious what the evolving perception of what livable luxury and what true luxury is sort of meaning for people in this time, because I'm sensing people have a very different notion today because of how their priorities have shifted during this time. Laura, what's your sense about that?
Well, it's interesting because I think that it's kind of polar opposite in a way for my residential clients to the people that we are greeting coming to our commercial work. So yeah, the commercial, I think the commercial clients, they are sort of looking for intimate spaces, like very, very sort of personal spaces, and like almost in a way to be isolated. Like they don't want an environment with a lot of people, and so, you know, having a boutique hotel, for example, is like very, very appealing as opposed to going to somewhere that has 200 rooms. And the choice of doing that in a local sense is very, I think, very luxurious. For residential, I would say it's about choice. Always, that is a sense of luxury and the sort of flexibility to have more space. It's true, the idea about being able to have people around you, your chosen family, your quarantine family, whoever it is that you feel safe being with, and having enough room for everyone to be both together safely and apart. Comfortably. I mean, that truly is, that truly is luxury. Space is a luxury, air, light, all of those things. We all know that. And I really do think that circles back to this sense of security, the sense of calm, sense of confidence. But we need that not just at home, we also need that in a public environment. So I've been sort of grappling with both of those things, both with my clients and with my own independent projects. I mean, Richard and I at the Hacienda have kind of shifted and started building more guest rooms, and may in fact put that casita, that 5 to 10 casita plan in play, because people want to come see us, and we want them to come. And we want to be able to do that generously and safely, so that for us is a luxury, to be able to do that, and have many clients that are thinking the very same things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Several members of the audience have been asking questions about, are you thinking differently about materials and things that you're using in projects? And I know, Laura, that you've always sort of like this freedom that Arteriors gives you to work with a lot of different materials.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've never been a fan of synthetics. I mean, I always say that plastic is landfill waiting to happen. For me, that's like temporary design. So I gravitate towards bronze and wood and, things that have authenticity and that will last, and but that's just my own personal aesthetic. That's what I really love. But responsibly harvested woods, when we lacquer something low VOC, I mean, we do pay attention to all of that. It's super, super important. And even the idea of that led me to, found my studio here in Mexico, because we are working with local materials, ancient materials, fibers and clay and wood and all of these things. So yeah, I think it's probably as close to the earth as possible and close to the artisan's hand as possible. That sort of guides me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Matt, I wonder if you could, so we haven't had a chance to see your collection yet for Arteriors. It comes out in the spring of 2021, I'm told. I'm wondering, Matt, if you can give us a little bit of a tease, a little bit of a description, so we have something to look forward to in the spring of 2021.
Sure. It's like following on Laura's comment. I mean, it's really inspired by many similar things, and just an authentic connection to materiality and a connection to the hand of the maker. So this was really inspired by simple techniques. We've got a number of micro collections within the main collection that's getting released. One is about ceramics and glazes. and really just the imperfections that are found in that and the beauty that's found in that. Another one is bent on sort of slumping glass. Again, the same thing, the kind of the imperfections that are found in that and the way that glass slumps to create a form, really playing off of very simple geometries and simple techniques. Like Laura said, I mean, some of these are age-old techniques that have been around throughout history, and we're exploring them in a more modern way, but really just kind of really appreciating the beauty in those techniques. So, you know, for us, that's at the core of who we are and what inspires us. You know, when Laura was talking about sort of patinaed metals, and she was talking about the warp and weft and natural fibers, and she was talking like that is very much ultimately what drives us also. And there is such beauty in these original these materials, these authentic materials, that, you know, just sort of subtle manipulations, subtle moves really can create some very unique pieces. So we're really excited about that. It's mostly a lighting collection with a variety of lighting types, and then we have a number of accessories and a few pieces of furniture as well.
That's great. Barry, any?
And the one thing I would add is, like Laura said, one of the great things about Arteriors is how extensive, and this isn't just a plug for Arteriors, we found this out firsthand, is their reach into all of these different maker communities across the globe. You know, whether they're artisans in Portugal or in India or in, all over the place, really just, they have connections to great makers all over the world. And so if you're looking for a particular type of technique, they already have relationships with people that you can explore those techniques with.
Interesting. What were you going to say there, Barry?
It's really a continuation of what you're hearing. I'm going to echo a lot of this. What a pleasure to work with Arteriors, and the knowledge that they have globally of where you can get something manufactured responsibly and beautifully. What materials you can repurpose with woods, with metal, the natural materials, the stone, leather, things that we like to use, straw, hand woven things. I think too, when humankind is forced indoors, as we feel we long to be outside. I think that influence from the natural world is where every pattern that's ever been designed on a fabric comes from. Prehistoric man was drawing animals and flora and fauna on the cave walls in the winter when they couldn't get out, long before, if that was the earliest interior design, expressing themselves that way. We're still doing it. We're not that much different. And I think that now what resonates with us is that natural world that we feel that we may not be able to go out into as, depending on where you live, especially in the urban areas that people feel a little bit. I think that's why they're moving to the country and headed out of the city to some large degree here. And again, I think interiors best reflect their domain, what we see through the window, an extension of that. So I think bringing more and more organic and naturalistic references into our interiors is going to be both a conscious and an unconscious part of what we're going toward. And this idea of livable luxury, if I'm asked specifically, it's living a wonderful, pampered life in your interior without having to worry about it. Things that you're not going to worry that you have to put a coaster down here, or that this fabric is easily stained, or that this crinkles and takes a lot of the more that you feel that you're going to have to be inside, the more you're going to be living there, the less you want to have to take care of that. Certainly, you just want to enjoy it. Yeah. So I think that a trend there will be for livable luxury will be just that, things that we don't have to toil over maintaining. So an easy maintenance is a real issue there, both with the materials that we use, the colors. I think those all white linen rooms are not easy to live with. I think you may see less of that. and that's also not year round. So we'll just see where this goes.
Well, so picking up on that actually, and both this notion of sort of everyone traveling less and being restricted in their movement, and a couple of different people in the audience have asked how you all are finding inspiration during this time? So often when I'm talking to designers, the go-to answer is always travel. I am so inspired by my trips and by all these exotic places I go. And since none of us are doing that right now, how are you finding inspiration, and where is that inspiration coming from?
Well, if I might speak to that.
Please, Laura.
Yeah, I think that it's really interesting because I'm the one that answers always travel as inspiration for me. And growing up, I didn't travel very much, and so much of what I learned came from books and going to the museum, and I think really traveling inward. And this situation, this COVID situation, really took me back to that. And I cracked open those old sketchbooks. I went back to my library, which frankly is still in boxes, but and I reconnected with my meditation practice, which I really needed to do. And what I found is that there's a lot inside that really has informed my work in the last 6 months. It's been, I think it's been an interesting human challenge throughout all of this. And I have been, again, I've been lucky because I've had a wonderful garden. The house might not be done yet, but the garden is continuing to bloom and becoming mature. And so I have had nature to refer to. And that, for me, is always the biggest influences, more than anything else, is nature. So I think that this trying time has, I think, all taught us that we have a lot more inside of us than we knew, and a lot more strength than we knew. And I just expect some really amazing architecture, interiors, and product to come out of all of us in the next year. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. Matt, I know you and Andrew have both been sort of nodding your head. What do you think, Matt?
I agree. I think, this is when innovation happens. I mean, if you look back through, I think Laura said this is the third time in her professional career that that we've had these setbacks. And I think, we look back to that too. We look back to 9/11. We look back to the financial crash in 2008. And you look at what was born in those times. I mean, somebody was telling me that, Airbnb and Uber and all that came out of the financial crisis in 2008. Innovation will come out of this. And this is the time when you can step back, take a breath, think about where you want to go, where you want to take your practice, what kinds of projects you want to work on, how you want to position yourself to get there. And I think ultimately that is, that's what's going to happen. And I think on the product side too, no manufacturer sort of sitting idly by, right? They need to always be top of mind. They need to come out ahead. So as there are new product launches, they're going to want to make sure that they're innovating as well. And so if we can collaborate with manufacturers to where we can bring our new ideas that have been inspired by what's going on to them, and sort of share in that kind of innovation, then I think that we're continuing to move something forward, even if it's maybe not in the same direction we would have gone a year ago.
I think all that, I mean, the travel, the innovation, I think traveling within your own head, Laura was suggesting that she's gone back to things that she experienced earlier, is a big deal. I grew up all over the world. My father worked for a foreign corporation. I lived on every continent before I was out of high school. And we would move from India to Japan depending on where he was. I'm matriculated in South Africa. All of these things, it's funny, the more that you're not running to catch a plane or racing down the road to get to a meeting, the more time you have to think. And the more you think, the more you travel in your mind. And the more that you do that, the richer your work becomes. It's just, you have to tap back into it, travel within your own consciousness and your own memory. The other thing, strangely, is that we do have media, social media, we have films, we have things we can do. the number one selling piece I've ever designed for any collection was something I did for an upholstery collection with Tomlinson, where I literally stopped a black and white 1930s movie with Myrna Loy walking across the screen and traced a chair, a one-off chair. That's our Roseanne chair with that line. It's our number one selling line. I remember someone ordering 240 of those for a restaurant in Dubai or whatever. And
Wow.
all my travel was to my family room to be watching the television and traveling through time to look back and see what would still resonate in the present, because there's this richness to history that we can see in books and film and in art. There are so many ways. You can go to any gallery in the world on your computer and see all of their sculptures. You can't touch it and you can't feel it, but we've touched stone before. We can understand the basis of what it is, and I think there's going to be this pent up desire to go and see those things in person with everyone after this goes too, because they will have realized all the things if they're doing a lot of what I'm doing, and sort of traveling from Fauquier County, Virginia, all over the world fairly regularly, virtually. I think that they can start making these lists of places they want to go visit when they can. So I think there's that too. But I think that there are all kinds of ways to create. We're all creative people. Everyone tuning into this podcast is a creative soul. And creativity, I think, is often magnified in silence and in that sort of isolation.
I think also we were all educated in this profession where we produced content, we evaluated content, we were critiqued on that content. I have found it to be really informative to just look back at our own work. We have so much work over the years and so much unbuilt work over the years, and going back into that to mine for inspiration and ideas that never were fully vetted or fully carried through has been like really refreshing. We've all said we're all run. Not that we've had nothing to do for the past 6 months, but it's more about just, taking stock of what you've accomplished and using that as a real catalyst and inspiration to move forward can also be very productive.
Well,
I love
go ahead.
that, Andrew, because I did that too. And
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah.
it was so shocking to me. I was like, wow, I forgot about that project, or I forgot about that rug that I designed 10 years ago, or,
Right.
yeah, we don't have time to assess where we've been. And I think that if there was one silver lining in this, it was that it gave us a moment to stop, to assess, and to be able to plan forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and just before we wrap up, I'm so curious, Laura and Andrew, to hear from both of you. How did those projects feel to you? Did they feel long ago and far away? And did you feel like you're in such a different place now? Or did they feel sort of familiar and you're like, oh yeah, I want to work some of this back into what I'm doing now?
I think for me, sorry, Laura, I think for me, every project is incredibly familiar. They never go away.